Sure. Do you want that one?
I'll watch. Oh, yeah. No, it's right here. No. All right. Oh, wait. It's everything. Take away from the.
All right, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. Hope you had a great lunch. Able to have a little bit of quiet time. Now we're going to move into the celebration part.
I need to write it down for you.
Nice background.
There you go. All right.
Perfect. All right, we're gonna all those great things Mary was referring to before we went to lunch that you guys have going on in your classrooms. Anything that you'd like to share. Once again, you can share a link if you want us to pull something up. If you got an awesome picture you want to show us, or if you just want to share out what you got that's going on and really supporting students. So anybody want that time to shine?
We already know good things are happening because you showed us on the Jam boards. So just say it.
Want Mary and I to dance up here for a few minutes?
That's probably a bad idea. I'm gonna go with no. How about this? 2 hands in the air if you have started a single PDSA cycle of improvement. There you go.
Woohoo.
Yeah,
Look at
whoopsie.
that. That's a
That was
celebration.
good. Hands up in the air if you have posted some learning requirements in some way, shape, or form.
There we go.
You thought you had nothing. 2 hands in the air if you have a long-term goal. Keep them up if you've got data to go with it.
Woohoo.
Guys, you were holding out. That was awesome. Did I miss anything?
No, it's good stuff.
I think that's good
great.
stuff.
Yeah.
Anything else for the good of the group? I gotta quit
And-
double miking. I'm sorry.
And if something pops up later and you're like, man, I really would have liked to share that with everybody, let us know. Throw it in the issue bin. Yes, sir. I'll bring you this.
I was just going to say that IEPs feel especially warm under these circumstances, a lot warmer than they can be. Sometimes it's just hustle and bustle, but I think parents really appreciate what we're doing, and it shows when we're able to really get down and dirty in the IEPs.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's something to celebrate right there. Really drawing on what Adrian just talked to us about before lunch, how we're engaging our key partners and supporting each other in this process. Thank you. Right. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close that window for our celebrations. And we're going to move on to look at those PDSAs, those plus deltas that we did right before lunch. So just kind of want to take a look. Yep, we'll start here with our pluses. So organization seems to be working. The time for conversation and then that time to apply. So kind of that routine that we've been using. Good suggestions, organization of our time. Making the learning meaningful, right? Being able to apply it right back to your classrooms. Glad to hear. Easy to follow and the information's easy to follow. Very conversational, laid back delivery. That's what Mary and I are going for. So we appreciate that. Pacing's going well. Great. And that meaningful information. So with your deltas, what we did was we threw them into a slide so we could kind of look at what those RXs were. So based on your feedback, what are we going to do to help shape that afternoon time? So that need time to work. So what Mary and I talked about was just really those action planning times, dedicating 10 minutes to that. Also knowing at the end of the day, you're going to have additional dedicated time as well too. More independent work time. We're going to build that through just through that process we just spoke about. I'm going to just jump right to this one because it kind of goes with that part. As CCI, you know, you had that work time at the end of the day, just not having as much work time. So we're going to really work to balance that, to give you that work time as we go, and maybe not save all of it right for the end of the day. Back here of needing more breaks. So we've built some breaks in. What we're going to ask is please feel free to take care of your personal needs. We get it. We get that there's a lot of sitting right now too, also due to some of our restrictions. If you need to get up and you need to go use the restroom or go grab more water, please feel free to do so. All right, so just needing more support. Are there things created that we can use and not have to necessarily recreate the wheel? Because I get it, we don't have time for that, absolutely. So please know that there's those links on those action planning slides do have a lot of great examples, and some of them have templates in there of things you can take back and recreate and use, or not recreate, but kind of modify for your own needs and then use. All right, we're gonna time to collaborate with grade level counterparts. This afternoon, if you and your table partner or somebody else want to continue to talk during that action planning time, please feel free to. Okay, that action planning time can also be used for some of that collaboration. For more examples, please see the photo galleries that we've linked in. We know that CCI is heavy on examples. And please know the TSP is intentionally a little lighter on the examples because now it's really that turn for you guys to implement and to take back and start having ownership over that work. Having AU EPS in this training or providing more information for essential skills teachers. Absolutely, EPSs are always invited. We've had Greg with us this morning. If you have more questions, let us know. We can collaborate more during work times.
And Danielle, can I just throw out too that,
Yeah.
again, in those photo galleries, and maybe something we can do is when we get to those action planning slides, we can be a little more specific and intentional with, try this link,
Sure.
try this link. There are resources for you in there, but I get it that sometimes you get so many resources that you don't know what to do with them. So that's certainly something we can do
Yep.
too, is kind of direct you to some of those examples, samples, and then like Danielle said, we're around as well. And we'll help you out as best we can.
Yep, absolutely. And if you have specific things you're looking for, feel free to ask us because we might be able to say real quick, that's the link you want to go to, okay? And then just more time to discuss our action steps with group members. You got it. We're going to work on that for you. Build that in there. Anything else that maybe just popped into your head or you want to get addressed before we continue on this afternoon? Mary, would you add anything else?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're ready to roll into our next component.
Woohoo!
So we're going to have some fun, strategic planning. So this is going to follow the same format that Mary used for customer focus. So when we're looking at strategic planning, we're looking at what is strategic planning. And strategic planning really looks at the processes that we're going to use to create course and class goals. And then what we're going to do is create those action steps in order to achieve those goals, and it's who we're engaging in that. So we're engaging students, staff, teachers in that process. This is so important because it's an opportunity for teachers and students to really interact with those district and school expectations. And then we're also able to publicly display the data and the goals. And this allows everyone within that system to know where we're headed, know what we're all working for, and to be on the same page. Our whys here are being able, or what this is going to look like, what this is going to look like is students being able to have conversations about those standards. Mary was talking about that earlier, about what standards you're using for your goals. This is going to be students having ownership over that and being able to talk to that. It's also going to look like individual and class action planning and goals. And then it's also going to look at that baseline data. So where are we and where do we want to get to? So that's going to be the big part of strategic planning. So now what we're going to do is before we get into that content, just like we did in our last section, we're going to take that time to self-assess. So on that page 19, you're going to find your self-assessment for strategic planning. I'm going to ask you to complete that. Remember to do it on what is your current state. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. Where you're at's where you're at, and that's perfect. That's great. So I'm going to come back in about 2 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next part. All right. Looks like everybody is finishing that up. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive into that first area there, looking at those class goals. So how we're aligning class, course, and program learning goals to the requirement of the school plan and the next grade level. So this is going to start with SMART goals. Just give me a thumbs up if you've ever used a SMART goal before. All right, I'm sure you all have, you've got this in your sleep, I understand. So when we're thinking about SMART goals, we're thinking about them being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. I had the pleasure yesterday, talk about something that worked out well. I was in a classroom yesterday that went right with this. I was in an elementary SEB classroom, and they were starting a lesson, and the teacher was going over, kind of previewing what they had done. They're reviewing what they had done. So she asked them, you know, what have we been working on? And the students share, we've been working on our SMART goals. So she said, okay, what is a SMART goal? So each student started sharing, and one student raised his hand and said, well, the S stands for specific. And the teacher was able to pick up a piece of paper with a big S on it, had the word specific under it, and put it on the board. They went through the whole word. The students knew exactly what it meant to write a SMART goal. And as they continued talking, I learned that that's what they've been doing. They were writing SMART goals for their own learning and for their class learning. So this was happening both on the class and the individual level. And we're talking, these guys were, I believe, second grade-ish. So it was really cool to see. So this is not just something for us. Sure, where you guys are using this all the time, writing your IEPs, absolutely. But this is also something that students can be engaged in. And what we're gonna do, you're gonna see a lot of connections in this part to your CCI, okay? What we're talking about now is how we're engaging those partners in this process. So here's just a couple examples of looking at those goals. Our first two here, definitely time bound. We can see that. I think what's important right here is that we're talking about 100% of this room. So when we're talking about these goals, especially on the class level, we're talking about everyone in this class. So therefore, the words, the verbiage that we're using is really important in order to feel inclusive. Here's another one, specific, definitely measurable. We're really starting to look at how can our students be co-producers in their learning. I think this is a great one to talk about ownership. So not only do we have a goal written in that SMART format, we also have ownership here. The kids' pictures are on this goal, as well as they've all came in and signed it. And what's really neat is as you look at this, it is not just signatures. Some kiddos maybe couldn't write, so their names are typed in. Everybody's included in a way that works best for them. And just one more example, looking at that measurable piece, but also that all students will complete this goal. All right, so keeping that in mind, keeping about what you have going on in your classroom, we're going to start to turn right into that table talk time. So the questions we're going to ask you to reflect on are, what goals have you published and posted to assist in setting direction, or I'm sorry, is to assist in setting clear direction for your students? As well as, how do you engage your students in monitoring progress towards class goals? If you haven't written a goal yet, that's all right. Where you are is where you are, and that's great. So start to think about what's one learning goal you want to set, and maybe set yourself a date for when you want to have that implemented for. So just like you did earlier, what I'm going to ask you to do is to reflect on these questions. And then when you're ready, go ahead and turn to your table partners to have that discussion. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to do this. And we'll give you kind of a gentle reminder if we don't start to see those conversations happening. But first reflect, and then have those conversations. What might you need from me to get started? We good? All right, off you go, have your conversations. Be back in a few. All right, if you can start finishing up those conversations. All right, thank you for bringing your attention up front. There were some great conversations going. Could I get a spokesperson from two different groups to share out some of that conversation? I went 2 instead of 3. I want you to be mindful of that. See, I'm cutting it down. I get it. It's the afternoon. So I only need 2. 1 and, can I have one more? Oh, thank you. 1 and 2. All right, we'll go ahead and start back there. Sure. So it's that collection of data, then also how we graphing it, kind of going with that part about publicly displaying. And then add in the layer of 2020, how are we also supporting it virtually? Awesome. Thank you for that. But you know what? That's great. Great. Thank you. So looking at that learning goal and how's the data supporting that and how are we supporting that with students? Thank you all for that conversation and that time. All right, with that now that we talked about what that learning goal is, now we're going to talk about how to get there. And we're going to do that through looking at the action steps. We're going to talk about what those action steps are and some plans to get there. So if we want students to be invested in their learning, we have to give them the how. How are they going to do that? So we're going to look at some tools. One of those tools being a classroom action plan. So this is something that you can work together with students about what are we going to do to get to our goal. We're also going to look at an affinity diagram, another way to get student voice. You're probably familiar with both of these from CCI. Here are 2 more examples of affinities. And as you can see, the question is, why is writing hard for me? So you're collecting those answers, you're giving the students voice. This is allowing the students to be those co-producers in their learning. Then we have interest survey. You see a quick hand up if you've ever used an interest. Sure. Awesome, some people in the room. I'm a fan of interest surveys. Definitely because you can use them across grade levels. We can use them with the little itty bitty guys. You can use them with your high schoolers. You can also use them across programs. It's really easy to put pictures into an interest survey. You can also make them more specific for your kiddos. This is a great, great way in order to get that voice and that choice from kiddos. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to watch a video of a teacher working with a student on making some choices, talking about his learning. He's got ownership over that learning. And what I want to say as the video goes is that they might be talking about the short term, but we know that those short-term results are going to yield the long-term results. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a lot of breakfast, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Tina. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. 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 Appreciate it.
You're not on.
How about now?
Yes, you're on.
Okay, hitting the button would help. All right, so as we watch that video, you can see that.
I think that might have been our Zoom people not muted, perhaps.
Okay, all right. Wasn't sure it was me. I didn't know what.
I was like, I don't think it's us.
That's all right.
Okay, there
Okay,
we go.
we're golden. All right, so
Golden.
as you can see, the teacher was utilizing a variety of tools with that kiddo too. So the student was able to respond verbally, and yet she also had some visuals paired to support his needs. So when watching that video, what were some of your thoughts? What did you like? What questions might you have? What would be some things for some group conversation? Yeah. So she utilized choices for him. For that kiddo, they had some picture choices. It could look different for another student. So it wasn't him having to come up with all these big ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it did. That's comforting.
Absolutely. So you notice that the student kept choosing that last answer. So I question that as well too. So might that be an opportunity? How might we be able to offer that in different ways? I wonder what strategies the teacher used. Maybe she had realized that as well. Maybe she offered them differently each time, but that would definitely be something to pay attention to. Because we want it to be meaningful for our students. We don't want our students just to go through the motions. So definitely something to pay attention to. Thank you. Yes. Great. So something he's done before, something that he's done in practice. So when we think about that systems approach, something that's repeatable. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Anything else? All right, great. So taking that, we're going to move into thinking of some other tools to support students. Here we've got a ladder diagram. Your how-to for your ladder is on page 7B3, just so you know. But when we're looking at a ladder, this is one of our tools to get the action planning done. So you're going to start at current state, and then you're going to go to your desired state. Right in these rungs of the ladder, that's going to be your action steps. The thing about a ladder is that it's sequential. So these are going to build on each other to get there. And I believe earlier this morning, we were talking about backwards design somewhere in that side of the room. Yep. Another tool that could support with that. So we know where we want to be. You could work backwards as well.
Yeah.
Within that ladder, you're going to have those drivers. What's going to help us get there?
What?
And then you're going to have restrainers. What might hold us back? What do we need to plan for in order to get to that goal? Here's an example, and this comes from the SSP school. An SLP used this. So at the bottom, they had what's our current state? And then they went ahead to those successes. Where are we going to be? What I like about this example was these actionable steps in the middle. They could color it in as they went. So the kiddos now have ownership over this. They had ownership over creating the action steps. Now, as they go, they can color it in. They can see where their learnings, where they're headed, but they can also talk about where they've been as well. Okay.
Danielle, can I say something too?
Yes.
You know what, that you just triggered something for me. Each of these steps, if you think about it, is leading toward a long-term goal. is a guide to your PDSA cycles.
True,
So
absolutely.
you're more or less doing your year's work right there with the students.
Yep.
All mapped out.
Yep, absolutely, great connection, thank you. Is there any questions when thinking about that ladder diagram? If you have any or they pop up, feel free to let us know.
And correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to learn about it even more in upcoming courses
Yeah,
down the line, right?
Yes, they are.
Shameless
yes.
plug.
Yes, they are. There as you go and yes, for some of you already might be jumping into some of that, but
True.
you will be working with the ladder and when we're talking about high performing teams. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is in your book on pages 22 and 23, you're going to see 2 pages. These pages really kind of outline what that customer focus, talking about what Mary had talked about earlier, into strategic planning, looking at those standards, into the goals, into the action steps. Also look at the roles of individuals. I'm going to ask you to take just a little bit of time here, probably about 2 minutes to look at it, and then we're going to move right into that work time with your partners. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to look, and then I'll pop up the slide for the directions for that conversation with your partners. By the end of the day, I'm going to get the hang of this microphone, I promise you. All right, as you're finishing that up, we're going to move into that table talk time. So what you're going to do is with your partners, you're going to identify at least 3 different ways teachers can give students and staff a voice and choice in that action planning for how to set and reach those personal goals in the classroom. We're going to ask you to do is, we've seen all the great work you've been able to do this morning and all the wonderful ideas you've generated. We're going to ask you to put those on the Jamboard for the good of the group. So as you can go ahead and reflect on the question, move into those table talk conversations, and just remember to put the answers on the Jamboard. We're going to kind of monitor the room, and we will check in about 5 minutes.
And Danielle, would this be a good time to remember we've been keeping track of
Yes.
some of the ideas that we've shown and that you shared up here on the activity bank. I know for some of you, this green, when I sat in the back earlier, the green was a little hard to see. So if you want us to move this around, or if you want to come take a stroll and just be mindful of everyone's space, feel free to come and take care of that as well.
Great. All right. What might you need from me right now? We doing okay? All right, let us know. We'll check back in about 5 minutes. As you're having those conversations, please try to add something to the Jamboard for us. We're going to check back in just a couple minutes. So if you could start adding to the Jamboard, that would be great. All right, thank you so much. Thank you for those who were able to share our Jamboard. We appreciate all the great conversation that was going on, and we know you were completely invested in that, so we really appreciate it. I'm just looking at our Jamboard, using those visuals, giving choice. We talked about that through that video, how important that can be for students. And also for all of our students, offering those choices at times can kind of reduce that cognitive load so that they can truly focus on what you're asking them to do. So if you can take some of that cognitive load off the process, it can really help. Also, we've got more giving choice, asking students what they can do to reach their goal. And what can they do outside of school? I love that. So pulling in those different aspects. What outside of school can help support you? Love making SMART goals to grow in certain classes, to maintain grades, great. Bringing in the parents, right back to what Adrian was talking to us this morning, that value. Also that option to talk through those choices. So why do you want this one? Why do you not want this one? Some of those metacognition pieces can support students in their further steps. Great, thank you so much. Mary, will you flip me back to the,
Sorry.
don't be. So with that now, we're gonna move into that action planning time. So what you're gonna wanna do is you can use your self-assessment within your book. Oh, thank you, Mary. You can use your self-assessment in your book as kind of that basis of those action plans you want to write. On page 60, again, that's where those live, and that's where you're going to write it. If you're okay, we're going to follow the same process Mary used earlier. We're going to combine that writing those action plans with diving into some of the doing. Now, what do you want to do to support those? Here are just some ideas, if you need some ideas of where to get started. Also know, here are some of those resources we talked about earlier and some of those photo galleries for those who might be looking for just a little bit more on the examples. So I'm going to go ahead and give you 10 minutes. That sound good, Mary? We're going to go 10 minutes, check back in, and before we move on to our next piece. Are there any questions? All right, great. Please feel free to reach out to myself, Greg, Mary, if you need anything. want to thank all of you. I thank all of you for your dedication during that time. Everyone was really on task and working on those action plans, and we really appreciate that. And with that being said, that was kind of that 10-minute window. We're going to go ahead and give you guys a break now. So it's 1:20. We'll start again at 1:30. All right, so please feel free to stand up, stretch, use the restroom. If you have any questions, let us know. Just FYI, that beeping is this timer. It's going to beep every minute. So just so you know, there's no fire, there's no emergency. It's just the timer.
timing. Whew. Believe it or not, that nice little beep was the actual 10-minute is up beep. So that one was kind of a letdown. I was expecting something a little bit more grand, but if I could just ask that everybody wrap up whatever it is they're getting themselves to, get to a natural stopping point, and we are going to roll on with our next and actually our last chunk of new learning for the day before we do open it up for some additional work time for folks that need it. So are we good? We good to roll? I just have to be honest with you guys. Because of how well you are following directions and working hard and having good conversations that have kept us on track, I have never in my life worked with a group who is so much precisely on point with the agenda the way that you guys are. Literally to the minute, every time, every time. So kudos to you guys. It's a big celebration, and I just can say that's never happened before. So good day. All right. So the last chunk that we're going to talk about for today is this component of leadership. And I know when you look at this screen right now, you kind of see somewhat of an empty linkage diagram. And you probably don't remember this, but on the original one from earlier this morning, there was a line that went right through the center of the linkage diagram. You may not hear some administrators or coaches talk about above the line or below the line. Everything above the line is that setting direction piece. So it's all that long-term stuff. So we talked about knowing those learning requirements for the year, setting the goal for the year, looking at the data for the year. Leadership is that one area that encompasses everything, right? You're going to show your skills as the leader for the entire year through every PDSA cycle and for every fun day and activity in between. So when we look at this slide and we think, what is it? Why is it important? And what would it look like in action? This is you. As the leader of the room, you've heard us say it before. You set the tone, you set the stage. Oftentimes we talk about that mission statement. You guys, you get the mindset in the right place so that we can identify what we're here to do and how we're going to do it well. But the leader's job really goes above and beyond just that. It has to do with, and you've said it before, monitoring the progress towards your goals, communicating that progress with others, and checking in with your key partners throughout the process. This is important because as the leader of your classroom, you are the model. Students are looking to you every day. Paraprofessionals, colleagues, related services, parents, administrators are looking to you every day. And if you're doing your job well, a couple of things are going to happen. One, folks are going to celebrate with you. You're going to have those days, we've all had them, where we get the win. The light bulb clicked, a student gave you the nicest compliment. It doesn't even matter, but we've all had those days where things just go right. And as the leader of a room, we want to capture those days, and I hope you remember them forever. But we also know that the best of leaders have the worst of days sometimes, whether it be with a kid or a family member or an administrator. We all have uncomfortable moments, and a leader who's truly leading this system is going to guide the parties involved through the problem. And you're all going to have trust that you're going to get through the problem, come out on the other side better for having experienced it than if it had never happened at all. And that is your role. So what does that look like in action? We talked about missioning. That's just the first step. What we will spend time on is looking at other ways that we can communicate, that we can reach out. You're probably going to notice that some of these things are ideas that you all have surfaced already, and you didn't even realize it. So we're going to dive in, we're going to celebrate together, and we're going to try some new things together as well. Any questions about what's on here? Anything I just said? Okay. All right. So for the final time today, we're going to ask you to self-assess. This is on page 24 in your book. This should take about 2 minutes to look at these 3 components and give yourself a quick rating on how well you think you're doing with these 3 items. That's page 24. Go ahead. Me too. Did everybody have enough time? Everybody has self-assessed? Thumbs up? Oh, thank you so much. All right, perfect. Then let's dive into a bit of a reminder real quick from what we've already learned about leadership from continuous improvement training. And the biggest thing that I'm going to make an assumption here, but one of the biggest things that traditionally folks walk away with is that idea of making the mission statement. It's one of those things that we can relate to pretty easily. We want our students to be involved, to feel involved, and to get their voices heard. And if there's one piece to that mission statement process that I want all of you to take away, it's just that. Get the students' voices heard in whichever way works best for you and the students you support. We introduced then in CCI this idea of an affinity diagram. And you see all the little Post-it notes up there because traditionally a lot of folks like to use Post-its. You certainly don't have to, but people tend to like to. So there's 3 questions that you ask when you're doing the mission statement. And they're right up there on the screen. Why are we here? What do we have to do well together? And how are we going to make it happen? And when you're done and everyone has their Post-it, it looks something kind of like this. You can see this teacher was very organized, very linear. So as the responses came in, he or she was able to take those responses and line up the like ones in nice little rows, which did a really great job of taking the ideas of 30 and bringing them down to probably 4 or 5. This process has been found highly, highly effective for building that sense of community, that sense of confidence and safety. So much so that it's not even in education. Do any of you know Trish Castlemere from the SSD schools? I'm pretty sure this is the affinity diagram she used with her POM squad that she coaches, that they then use to make the mission statement. So you can be linear, you can be organized and kind of more artsy. This particular teacher, I'm going to have a guess that this is a secondary teacher, passed out papers with those 3 questions and said, guys, give me your thoughts. You can do this if you want to. And for this class, maybe that was appropriate. But how many of you work with students who don't like to write? Who cannot write? Who struggle with understanding written text? Right? And so we're going to be smart. We're the leaders of the class. We know this about them. So when we choose to go through the mission process with them, we might rely on, I'm thinking back to some of the videos that Danielle showed you. Picture cues. Maybe your students need choices provided, and they can pick up a picture, and they can still have a voice heard. They just didn't do it by writing it here or by putting it on a Post-it note. So let's just be mindful of who we're working with and how they best communicate. I want to open the floor to any ideas. If you're faced with that situation and you're trying to get that voice heard, apart from what Danielle and I have shared with you, have you guys stumbled across any other strategies that have worked well for you? Going once? Going twice? Sold, and I say that only because I'm getting ready to move on. I don't say that as in we've shared all the ideas there ever are. We know that you're going to probably see more, and when you see them or try them or find something that works, please share them with us. Yeah? Hunting and pecking forever? Yes. 2 really important key factors I heard in your summary. And what I heard was that talk-to-text feature that can be used through Google for some students. One was you were very, very clear on the expectation for the student for that activity. Had it been a typing assignment, maybe he should have or she should have typed. But if that's not the goal, we want to know the thoughts. Who cares? Do it. The second piece, think of the confidence boost that young person now has. There's a tool out there that allows him or her to get the voice heard, but to be able to send an email or print it and turn it in just like the peers do. So great use of technology to really serve 2 purposes, if not even more. Thank you for sharing. That's what I'm talking about. You guys got this stuff. Please keep sharing it. And you might want to know, like, oh, that's great, I found a tool. Who should I share it with? You could always email us. But don't forget those facilitators or those coaches that work with you in your districts. They're a prime source if you find this stuff. Please do share it. Okay. So that being said, that's the mission statement. Are there any other questions before we dive into the next section? Okay. All right, so that means we're going to head this direction. It says, I can monitor and communicate class progress to students and their families. And you might be thinking, didn't Adrienne just talk to us about this? And I would say, she sure did. And we can expand on it. We can kind of summarize it, bring it together, and make some connections. And that's what we're going to do. All right. So this, I don't know why this picture makes me giggle every time. He just seems so sure of himself. We as teachers are forced, not that we wouldn't otherwise, but we really are forced to get creative with ways we communicate, not just with students themselves, but with the families. I think this school year, above any other school year in recorded history, has taught us how to be flexible and how to get creative. You started this conversation with Adrienne, but I'm personally not confident that we had a chance to finish it. So I'm going to throw it back to you. And this is for the whole group. What are ways that you've used to try to communicate with families? Successful or not, what are some of the things you've tried to do to communicate with families? And we're just going to start making a list. Do you mind writing? You're the best. Thank you. Yep. Okay, so texting through a Google number. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yep. Okay, Google Forms. So like a daily communication log? Okay. Sorry, I gave you like the hard job. So daily communication log, Google Forms. Good. Okay. Next. Yep. Keep it going. Class Dojo. Beautiful. So it sends messages. We're going to talk a little bit more actually about that particular one in a little bit. But that idea of quick and immediate, right? Cool. All right. What else? I know there's more out there. Thank you. Yep. Email is so great. Yep. Okay. So sticky notes straight up on the assignment type thing. Okay. What about you secondary folks? I know that's kind of a different ballgame because you don't always have students coming in showing you their red folder, you know, with their little things. What tends to work best that you found? Absolutely. So more specifically, what ways do you find successful when communicating information to families? Or let me rephrase, what have you tried? Whether it was successful or not, what have you tried? Gotcha, I'll be right there. Thank you. Yep, 1, then 2, then 3. You're 1.
I mean, for us, we use Zoom a lot, but I like using Zoom or usually Google Meet.
Sure.
You don't have to use it for like very formal IT, just sketching. So that works for us.
Wonderful, right? We've got it. Let's use it. Zooms, Google Meets, love it. Mm-hmm. Perfect. So the anonymity of a Google phone number is helpful. I heard that idea of setting boundaries, which I hope is something that if you didn't hear him say it, let's remember, you guys are people too. Setting boundaries, turning emails off at a certain time is A-okay. Yes, you can tell your boss I said that. I might get some emails, but that's okay. All right, I'll take it for the team. 1, 2, and there was another idea. Yeah. Awesome, thanks. Sometimes that actual real phone call. I feel like I'm talking to my kids sometimes where it's like, no, don't texting. Make a phone call. Hold it to your ear. It works. And people really value your voice, your time. And those are sometimes things that we take for granted in the world of immediate texting. Thank you. Was there one more? 2 more, I think. One. And was there another one? Okay, go ahead. Oh, fantastic. So a monthly communication straight from you with some questions to ask your child. Beautiful. Way to bring the education into the home if you're back to in-person learning. Love it. Was there one more or did I missee that? I'm going to blame it on the mask. Okay. Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry, thanks. See, mask, totally. Okay. So as long as you've got the appropriate releases, do it. Snap the picture, send it to them. Give them a real glimpse of what learning looks like. Not just sounds like, but what it looks like. Holy smokes, what did we spend? I think 5 minutes. And we have filled the poster. We can go to another one if we need to, but we've got a pretty full poster. Was there anything else before we move on? Yep, one more. Yep. Sure. Yeah, we don't know. You hit the nail on the head. So it really comes down as the leader, as we're talking about this leadership quality of knowing what works, not just for your class, but sometimes down to the individual family. That's one reason why we wanted to create this document. Now I understand and I get the struggle with you want a phone call and you want an email and you want a picture and you need me to do a song and dance for you. And we have to be able to balance that expectation, absolutely. So the idea is we have options. There are more out there, I'm sure that there are. And yet how can we harness what we know to meet the needs of our families while meeting the expectations of our world? Right? Easier said than done, but things that we can tackle together. So we're going to hang with this list for a little bit, and we're going to come back to it in a minute. Because now that we have a way to communicate that works with students, whether it's one way for all or multiple ways to meet the needs of many, we need to know what we want to share with them. And for many teachers, and I'm going to be one that says this might be a good idea, the idea that we can send them some data to show that students in their class are actually making progress, not just talking about the good stuff for the day, which we still need to do. That's wonderful. And as somebody mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that while learning can be fun and exciting, it also needs to be effective. So one of these methods, or however many you choose, should have some kind of data in there. You don't need to recreate the wheel. This is an example we showed you from CCI. It's pre-test data and post-test data. If you're already in the mode of texting parents, how easy is it to take a picture and text it? Don't make life difficult. If you've got a system that works, keep it. And yet, how can we strengthen it? Here's an example of a bar graph, plain and simple. They didn't even print this out. This was on, I think, old school graph paper. Do you remember graph paper? Look at the blue lines. Do you guys know that? Okay, I hope so. Oh, that's what this is. It's old school graph paper. And while it says this is a high school example, anyone could use a bar graph. Maybe your students make a bar graph using superhero pictures or something different. But however you have found successful to document the data might be something worth sharing with parents. Some of you have brought this up already, but there's different ways to do this. And some that we do want to spend a little bit of time talking about is the idea of a newsletter, which I've already heard some of you mention, as well as this idea of, they call it goal forms, or even like those daily check-ins. And it goes to the point that some parents want the big picture. I don't need to know what happens every single day, but I'd like to know what you're doing this month. The newsletter's perfect. Newsletters, you and your students decide what goes in there. You decide what's important, and that's what gets included. So a great way to build that community, that independence, working together, collaboration. Those goal forms and those daily check-ins might be for some of those families that A, want the details. You all probably have a family in mind who really likes the details. Also very supportive for, I heard a couple of you say, I work with kids that can't go home and necessarily tell their parents what happened today. The only way for them to know is for maybe tell my parents some questions to ask. Or maybe I can say, we did this in reading and we did this in math. Give them some prompts. So depending what you got, we want to give you some resources to help strengthen that communication. There's just a few examples up here of some newsletters. And on your own devices, you can kind of get in there and look at the details to get some ideas of what other teachers have chosen to include. I'd be remiss if I didn't specifically like this example because it does take a minute to say, hey, we're not just talking about doing great things, we really are doing great things, and here's the data to prove it. Quick and easy. It's a template. They can snap a picture and throw it in. When we move to work time in a little bit, we've provided you with more photo galleries of additional newsletters if you want to get real creative, as well as some different resources for how to create your own if you want to start getting artsy with it. So lots of resources to support you here. Oh, one more example. Okay, somebody mentioned Class Dojo. Here, that's what I thought. All right, here's what I know, but I'm gonna ask you if you want to share anything else. There's actually a little video after this that we can watch unless we cover all the bases because we probably have an expert here. I know A, it's free. B, I know it's an app that should work on all smart devices, phones, tablets, computers. I know it provides pretty immediate feedback, but the main purpose that I have seen it used for, while there are others, is positive behavior reinforcement. You could probably talk more in depth about some of the other features. What would you add to this basic descriptor? Okay. Got it. But I had left out a key feature that you talked about, which is the messaging feature. All right, so main use is through messaging, but also through some, could be used for some behavior reinforcement. Yep. Perfect. So for those of you that could not hear, this really works. You can use Class Dojo as a way to send out those newsletters. So my assumption would be similar to a Google phone number that is not your own. Class Dojo is also a separate account. So your parents would have to get the app, but then they could, and then you would invite them in. What we'd like to do, and we're not saying you have to use this by any stretch of the imagination, but what we do want to do is share a little video of a teacher, it's about 2 minutes, talking through this particular tool, just as an example of what's out there. It doesn't mean this is the only tool, but it may be something worth considering. Sound good? All right, here we go. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to do that for you guys. Okay. So I'm not going to make you guys go watch that whole thing again. I do apologize for cutting it off there by accident. What I would offer is in work time, if you want to finish that, it's about 15 more seconds. Feel free to do that. Yes.
I will add from the parent perspective, because my daughter actually, her teacher uses it.
Mhm.
They also give her JoJo points. And so it's like a reward system. So I know if I open up my app and she has 5 points for the day, you know, she earns a certain amount of points, she gets a reward or like a pencil or something.
Mhm.
But I can also tell her she's misbehaved because those points get taken away. And it's a good way for me to communicate with my daughter when she comes home that, hey, what happened at school today? Why, you know, what's going on with your JoJo points or whatever. So I think that's also a really good tool with that app as well.
Okay, so just for make sure everyone could hear, yeah, that's certainly something that teachers are in control of the points. From what I understand, if it was my student and they went to speech teacher could also give points, and they're back and forth. So again, a good conversation starter. I saw a hand here, and I think I saw a hand over here. Yes. Okay, so 1 and then 2.
Even if it is all negative, maybe communicating with different ways in the day, so they're not just seeing like, hey, this that can be kind of upsetting for them too. So looking at that throughout the day, you see how the child is going all next day.
Yeah.
You know?
So I love what you almost said. It's almost a word of warning because while there are tons of great features, as with anything, there could be a flip side. So how many of you have heard that probably from an area coordinator or a facilitator that we shoot for these 4-to-1 when it comes to positive to redirectives? So if that is the case, the same rule would apply with Class Dojo, right? So again, the idea would be that we want to build the positives. We want to recognize the good. I have heard of teachers taking the points away. If you're a PBIS school, your school might feel a little bit differently about pulling points away versus the natural consequence of not earning the points. And yet, either way, great conversation starters. But like you said, let's be mindful of the good it can do as well as the dangers associated if we don't use it respectfully. I saw a comment here and then one more to my left, and then we'll keep rolling. Did you want to add anything, Danielle? Good? Okay.
And there's a lot of input on the negative aspect. I mean, I can remember seeing all of the red, but it is data. And so if a parent sees all of that bad data, bad behavior data, it doesn't build morale or culture, I don't think, in the right way. But when a student sees that they are literally, I've seen students where they were -500, -1,000. That's data that a student is looking at day to day to day and not feeling good about it. And so there has to be some type of organizational best practice on how to be judicious and use wisdom with this particular tool. But I've literally seen it really get out of control, and I'm not sure it really helps at all.
Two good points I heard in that statement. One, what is this way that we're organizing and being mindful? You used organizational best practice, thumbs up for the vocab, and yet you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely, positively, as respectful professional educators, we have to be mindful of the good and the bad. And the other piece you hit on was, is it helping to meet this child's goal? And if the answer is no, and especially if the answer is, it's not helping them meet the goal, it's making it worse, is this the tool we should be using? That's the data, like you said, it is data. That particular example might say, this tool is not doing it. We need to try another avenue. Thank you for sharing very much. All right, last comment and a half.
I was just going to say, because I use Class Dojo and I give out points for kids coming to virtual groups. So they can earn up to 4 points, and there's to select what they get points for. So I have class attendance, working hard, participating, and I forgot the last one, but and then all for negative.
Okay.
And then whoever has the most points at the end of the month gets to get a prize.
So again, you've structured it in a very organized way that's communicated to others to help ensure that it's used effectively. Thank you. That's, I think, hits at your point right there. All right, last thing, and then we're moving on. We dittoed? We dittoed. That's great when we can ditto. All right, fantastic. Was there, and did you have, you good? Good, good? Yes, Greg.
The idea of knowing what your replacement behaviors are, right? Focus on what we want to do, not what to do. The connection back to CLS, CPI, right?
Yeah.
If you want to use this to go back to your learning environment, that's a great way to do it. Now, it also sometimes the confusion is that students don't know what they're earning points for and not earning points for. And it's not specific enough. So they just don't know, right?
Absolutely. So if you're going to use a tool like this, the idea is let's specify what it's being used for. Let's communicate it effectively to students, to colleagues, to parents, and let's use the data to decide if this tool is effective or not effective.
And something I would add with this conversation is that thinking of any tool that you're going to use for communication and for reinforcement, remember this conversation, because a lot of what we just talked about applies for multiple tools and processes that you're going to use.
Absolutely. Thank you. Whew, great conversations, heavy conversations, things that need to be talked about. So congrats on bringing it to the forefront. Woo. All right. Here's what I would offer you to do. And if you want to stand and stretch at this point because you just need to do that, please feel free to do that. All right. Bear with me. We're going to ask you to do a few things. First of all right, I want you to think, and this is just for you for a moment. What assessments or measures do you use currently to monitor progress throughout the year? So just kind of be thinking about that data piece for a minute. And then the final question is, what and how are you using to communicate that progress? Now we've created this lovely list up here. If you need to take a minute to stretch and take a walk and take a look, feel free to do that. Here's what you're going to do with this information. Grab one more Post-it note. And on that Post-it note, I want you to write down at least 3 ways that you're considering for communication with parents. Right now, off the top of your head, based on this whole discussion, what are these 3 things? Okay? Take a minute to do just that part. Now this learning piece is for you. That sticky note, whatever you wrote, that is yours and yours alone. Put it someplace where you're going to see it again. In just a few minutes, we're going to open this up to a larger table conversation. Feel free to bring your sticky note to that conversation, but you'll have one other piece involved at that time. So know that that's coming right around the corner. So I'm going to ask you to bear with me as we dive into this last section. And I bring it up here right now because this is almost literally a bookend to how we started our day and how we're going to start wrapping up the new content. This last section goes back to the organizational best practices. And this asks you, can you, as the leader of your classroom, are you confident with putting these into place? Now, you've already looked at these this morning. You played a game with these this morning. We've talked about these this morning. Just a reminder, these are those foundational components. As was mentioned before, these are the glue that hold your system together. If you want to refresh, there are pages 65 through 68 in your book. This teacher put them in student-friendly language and made a bulletin board. You don't have to do that, but you could. That's up to you. What I do want you to do is head to page 28. And on page 28 in your book is your final self-rating scale of the day. Knowing all that you know, here's what we're going to do. You're going to self-rate. I'm going to pause the direction there. I want you to self-assess, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with it. All right? I'm going to check in with you in this many minutes, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with this info. All right, go for it. Raise your hand if you'd like one more minute. Okay, you got it. One more minute. Okay, that ought to do it. If you need to kind of wrap it up as we're chatting, that's okay. All right. Think back to the beginning of today. One of the first things I asked you to do this morning was to stick a Post-it note onto the folder that you brought back with you from CCI. You might have put it on your learning log or on top of your book. I asked you to put it in a safe place. And it had to do with committing, I think, to 2 organizational best practices that you wanted to focus on. What I'm going to ask you to do now is grab that Post-it note. And if you can't find it, it's okay. But hopefully you remember what you put. Knowing what you know now, are those still your top 2? Knowing what you know now, what are you going to do to actually put them in place? And that is what I want you to talk to your table partners about. So when you're ready, turn. You can use that Post-it note as a cue if you'd like to. But your question is, what are your plans to put those organizational best practices into effect in your classroom? Are there questions about what I am asking you to do? Okay, this is a pretty important one, so I'm going to give you this many minutes. whole 4. That's 2 minutes apiece for most of you. If we need more, we can take more, but that's the goal right now. If you want to stand and stretch, make this a standing conversation, please do that. We'll see you in 4. All right, if you could finish up that last thought. All righty, folks. So here's what we're going to do. There are some seriously in-depth conversations happening right now. And before you lose a minute of them, I want you to turn in your books to your action planning page, which I think is page 60. Yep, page 60, for the area of leadership. And right now, while it's fresh in your head, I want you to write down some action steps wherever they fit for you for the area of leadership. This should take us, honestly, about 2 to 3 minutes. And then Danielle's going to give us some other directions. Sound good? Okay. Give me a wave if you need another minute. Okay, let's take one more minute and we're rolling along.
Okay, as you finish those up, we're going to go ahead and bring your attention back up here for our next steps. So as Mary said, we went through our big areas for the day, and you've been able to action plan in each of those areas. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to look back in your book at those action plans. And you're going to look at those action steps, and you're going to star those 3 big ones. Those are going to be your priority action steps. What are those big ones that you really want to focus on? I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do this, and then I'll bring your attention back up here with further directions for our next steps. Page 60.
Yep, everything from
Thank you.
strategic planning, customer focus, and
Yes.
leadership. Pick 3 of those.
Okay, now that you've got that completed, we're going to move into that next step. And we want to move into that individual work time and know that Mary and I have, from that plus delta feedback that we got earlier, we've been trying to work to balance those work times for you guys. So for this work time, what's going to happen is you're going to have about 25 minutes. We're going to check in at 25 minutes to see if you need longer, but we're going to start with 25. And this is going to be some things you might want to work on. You're going to look at those 3 high priority action steps that you just highlighted. You could do things like create a newsletter, look at any of the photo gallery, or check out some newsletter resources. We talked thoroughly about Class Dojo. You might be thinking that could work for me. That's something I want to check out. Also, create a customer survey, focused survey, something that you can use with your students, families, partners. I also would invite you to go back to any of those action time slides that we had, because there's additional resources on there. So this is your time to really get into that work. Once again, back to the kid president, finding that awesome. What am I going to bring back to the classroom? This is your time to start working on that. Also, if you need time to collaborate, if you and a colleague want to have a conversation around you, feel free to do that as well. Mary and I are here to help you, and just let us know what you need. So at this time, what might you need from me before you get started? All right, awesome. Then we are going to check in 25 minutes.
Guys, a quick thing that we're realizing is when you're clicking on the examples and things, try to make sure you're in your SSD email address. That's going to really help ensure that you have all the right permissions to see everything you need to see. So SSD emails is your best bet. Just a reminder to hop onto your SSD Google accounts. Because I think that's why I'm starting to get the emails. I think that's why some of you are getting blocked from your access to see some of the examples. It's because you're in your partner district account. So make sure that you're in your SSD.
All right, that's been our 25 minutes. So we want to just take a minute here to check in real quick. If you'd like an additional 5 minutes to work, if you give me a thumbs up. All right, I saw some thumbs. So with that being said, we're going to take 3 more minutes then. Kind of split the difference, okay? So I'll bring you back together in 3 minutes. All right, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up that work time. Please know that you're going to want to continue this as you head back to your classroom. We hope this was an opportunity for you to get a jump start on those things that you want to take back and implement. So we're going to really begin wrapping up for the day. So as we're doing so, there you go, Greg. As we're doing so, we're going to do an activity called Final Thought. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just think about a final thought from today, a question, a new tool, what's something that's standing out to you? What really are you kind of holding on to from today's learning? So we'll go for 30 seconds of think time. All right, and this is the last one we're going to ask for today. Can I get 3 volunteers to share out what's their big idea, their final thought from today's learning? 1, 2, just one more taker. 3, thank you.
Oh, you even had a 4 and a 5 and a 6.
Oh.
I was like,
Great,
man, all of
Jen.
a sudden.
All right, thank you. Will you begin for us?
Sure. I think my big final thought for the day is that newsletter piece, I think for me, and I guess something that I just never considered before for a high school
Sure.
student, because I feel like, you know, sometimes they're too school to school and they don't necessarily need to send that stuff home to mom and dad, but I think it would be a really great way to make that connection with them. So trying to figure out a way to make it good for a high school student and maybe make them do it and
Sure.
have them create it, and that way they have some say in it.
Great. So that, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Yes, absolutely. That newsletter piece. And I also heard you talk about that ownership and then also that age appropriateness. So yes, we can do it in high school, but how it's going to look. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah, I was sharing more data with my families, so I created, during the workshop, I created data folders on Google because I teach hybrid right now. And so when I do a PDSA cycle, I want to have my students do a pre-test and then like color in where they got and do like a goal for that, and then at the post-test they'll reflect on that, and then I can submit.
Great. So a lot of pieces there, using those Google folders to create data folders. And then through the PDSA, talking about setting those own personal goals and also looking at that data collection piece. Great. Thank you for sharing. And thank you, Jill.
Mine's also with the newsletter, trying that maybe if I send that home with the red folder that take home with their gen ed teacher, it still falls into the emails, and they don't always get an answer. And then also just student participation, having more of that as well.
Great. Great. So using that newsletter piece to help connect with those families, but also getting that student involvement within it too. Great. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. I hope you guys are all able to hold on to those big ideas as you head on back to see your students next week. So with that being said, we're really starting to wrap up here. We're going to take a look, just come back to those objectives one more time, where we've been today. We really took a look at that systems approach. We're starting to look at that, looking at those key partners and looking at what it means to have that high performing classroom learning system and how we're going to get high student achievement. Also those key partners and engaging your students, your staff, your team, your families in that process. We also were able to take the time to start assessing with that systems level check.
And Danielle, is it fair to say that we started that process today? These
Thank
outcomes continue into day 2.
Yes.
So while I think hopefully everything sounds familiar at this point, we do have some more learning coming.
Yep. We're going to continue to build on what we did today.
Yeah, so get excited. It's going to be good.
Thank you. Okay, well, with that being said, Mary and I thank you for your time. We're going to ask you first to go ahead to this link, start your kick-up evaluation. We're going to wait a few minutes and then we'll go ahead and put the kick-up code for you. If you've got any questions, let us know, but we really appreciate your time today.
And have a great weekend, guys. Thanks.
Yes. Be safe on the way home. Thanks for that connection to day two. I should have thought of that. Thank you. Come. I'm not gonna do this. Is the part of it. Am I still on?